The Trump administration announced with a number of other countries. So 14 EU countries also announced this morning. This was an organized action with the Trump administration and EU nations to punish Russia for this alleged attack that happened on British soil, where the UK, where Russia attacked a former Russian spy and his daughter with a nerve agent on UK soil. And the British government says they believe it is the Russian government who is responsible for this. And the British government has already expelled the number of officials from England. I believe 23, if I'm getting this right, 23 Russian officials were expelled by the British government a while back. I want to say last week or 2 weeks ago or something. But today was an announcement of organized, coordinated actions taken by the United States and 14 EU nations to expel Russian officials. Now, I'm going to get into the details of this a little bit, but it's quite interesting that there were 60 Russian officials expelled from America. And I say it's quite interesting because I believe, if I'm getting the number right, England expelled 23 officials. And if you look at the list of the different expulsions from the 14 EU countries today, they're all less than 23. A lot of them are like 4 or 2 or 1. And I was wondering, well, why 60? I mean, England expelled 23, so why are we expelling 60? Now, a thought I just had, I've been thinking about this. One thought I had is, I had read this is the biggest expulsion of Russian officials ever. Because I think in the Reagan administration, I'm going to check this out in an article, but I think in the Reagan administration, there was a time where they expelled like 50 something. So I'm wondering if 60 was chosen so the Trump administration could say, we have expelled the most Russian officials ever. I don't know. For some reason, I just thought of that when I was thinking of it. Anyways, we're going to talk about the details of this, and we're also going to hear what you have to say. So if you have comments on this, write to me on Twitter, @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Let me know what you think. And I want to quickly thank, I saw a donation fly by here. Miss Robma made a donation, and she said, keep up the good work, Steve, RSBN and mods. Despite YouTube, we will stand with you and keep praying against this demonic oppression that YouTube, Facebook, and Google are doing to you and others. Well, YouTube certainly won't fix this black screen that's been going on our broadcast for a year. So anyways, thank you, Miss Robma, for the donation. Your donations keep us on the air, so if you'd like to support Right Side Broadcasting, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, like Miss Robma did, and click on the $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Big shout out to our mods, JC and Real Frank right there right now, moderating, and Webster moderating the chat room. So what I want to do is I want to get into some more of the details about what happened today, and then take your comments about this. So if you have comments, write to me on Twitter @Lookner. I thought the Washington Post article actually had a nice summary of the events today. So you can see the headline: Trump administration expels 60 Russian officers, shuts Russian Seattle consulate in response to attack on former spy in Britain. So as I was saying, Trump administration today ordered the expulsion of 60 Russian intelligence and diplomatic officers in New York and Washington. That's Washington, D.C. It's a little confusing because Seattle's in Washington, but it's Washington, D.C., I believe. And the closure of the Russian consulate in Seattle, joining European allies and punishing Russia for the attack of a former spy with nerve agent. 12 Russian diplomats at the UN in New York and 48 at the Russian embassy in Washington, that would be D.C., face expulsion by the U.S. government for what senior U.S. administration officials described as covert intelligence operations that undermine U.S. national security. Now, this is interesting. They're not just kicking out these officials as punishment. They're not just saying, well, as punishment, we're kicking out these officials. The way the Trump administration has put this is that they're kicking out the Russian officials because they say they're being kicked out for what senior administration officials described as covert intelligence operations that undermine U.S. national security. So they're being kicked out not just as a punishment, but because the administration says they are conducting intelligence operations, covert intelligence operations that undermine U.S. national security. And they also said the Trump administration. They ordered the Russian consulate in Seattle closed by April 2nd. Senior administration officials said they believe it has served as a key outpost in Russia's intelligence operations, in part because of its proximity to a U.S. submarine base as well as Boeing manufacturing facilities. Now, this is interesting. Now, see, look, the next sentence says Monday's actions were in response to March 4th the March 4th nerve agent attack in Salisbury, England. But if you actually read what the administration says, they're not just saying, well, we're kicking them out as punishment for the nerve attack. They're saying we're kicking them out because they were conducting covert intelligence operations, and we're closing this Russian consulate because it's been used in Russian intelligence operations. Now, one question to me is, why not just say, I don't have a good answer for you, but I was just wondering, why not just say we're kicking them out as punishment? Why give this other rationale? We have two rationales for kicking them out. One is, the article says it. The article doesn't question it. The article probably should have questioned it. One rationale is, well, we're kicking them out in response to the nerve agent attack. But the other one is, well, we're kicking them out and we're closing the consulate because they've been conducting covert intelligence operations that undermine U.S. national security. So a question I have is, well, if these 60 officials were conducting covert intelligence operations that undermine U.S. national security, why not just kick them out before this? So it's and again, if the Russian consulate was being used to spy on the U.S. and it undermined our security, why not close it before this? So, and I don't have a good answer for you. Maybe there's some kind of diplomatic advantage to be gained by offering this other rationale for kicking these people out and closing the consulate, rather than just saying, well, we're kicking them out because as punishment. I haven't really figured it out yet. I feel like there is something going. There's some reason that the administration chose to cite this other rationale for kicking them out. But then that obvious question comes up. Well, if they were really undermining national security, why were they here before? Now, somebody might say, well, even if they're spying on us and undermining national security, it's too big a diplomatic deal to kick them out under normal circumstances. So maybe, somebody might argue, maybe this whole thing with the nerve attack in England gave the American government an excuse to kick these people out and to close this Russian consulate that they wanted to kick out and close anyway. I don't know. I'm just throwing maybe you have thoughts on this. Give me a shout on Twitter, @Lookner. Anyways, wanted to point that out. I thought that was interesting. Now, as I said before, the U.S. move came in coordination with 14 European nations, which almost simultaneously announced the expulsion of Russian diplomats on Monday. Now, what I wanted to show you, if I can find it, is where are the numbers of can I find it? EU nations number expelled. Okay, does CNN say how many there are? Now, of course, because it's CNN, I have to disable the autoplay video, which will inevitably start. Watch, it's going to start, and it takes forever to start, and I have to disable it because I hate their website. Okay. Now, yeah, so if you look at the list, look, the Czech Republic will expel 3 diplomats. Croatia will expel 1 diplomat. Denmark will expel 2 diplomats. Estonia 1, Finland 1, France 4, Germany 4, Hungary 1, Italy 2, Latvia 1, Lithuania 3, Netherlands 2, Poland 4, Romania 1, Spain 2, Sweden 1. So of all those, and then non-EU countries, we have, I might have to change my head. I think I said 14 EU countries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe it's 14 EU. I have to count up. But there's also non-EU countries. Albania 2, Canada 4, Norway 1, Ukraine 13. So Ukraine's the only one expelling more than 4. But US 60. So it's so much more. Now, one reason I saw, given that these other countries wouldn't want to expel that many agents, is, let me show you down here if I can find it. Each EU country kicked out 4 diplomats at most, suggesting the measures were intended more to send a symbolic message than as a fundamental attempt to wipe out Russia's intelligence network across Europe. I thought there was something else they mentioned here. I think, and by the way, we have another long black screen on YouTube, and I really apologize for that for people watching on YouTube. It's just insane, just crazy. Just telling my boss here. So apologies for that black screen on YouTube, guys. Again, I would encourage you, if you hate them as much as we do, that YouTube just throw... You won't see those on any other channel on YouTube. If you hate it and you're watching on YouTube, all you got to do is pause the video, as I said, go to the broadcast, rewind to the black screen, pause the video, right-click, click on Troubleshoot Playback Issue, and say, why can't you fix these black screens? I hate your stupid platform. I so look forward to when you have competition who actually cares about creators and viewers, and everyone abandons you. And just press send. There's a little button that says send on the bottom. You just press it. So there you go. It's very easy to send your feedback. So that's what I'd encourage you to do if you get a black screen. By the way, somebody made a donation. I want to say thanks. Andrew Check made a donation. Thank you, Andrew, for donating. So in case you missed it, I was wondering why. So I was talking about how the EU countries all expelled 4 or fewer diplomats. Now, I had read something. I thought I had read it in the Washington Post, but I didn't see it there when I went through this time. But I had seen in some article, maybe it was the Times, I don't know, it said, oh, here it is. Here, this I thought was interesting. You might say, well, why didn't they expel more people? But here's an interesting thing from the Washington Post. They said, Russia typically responds with tit-for-tat measures that expel an equal number of diplomats, sometimes after a delay of several days as the country's policymakers consider countermeasures. For that reason, small nations that have only a handful of diplomats posted to Russia may refrain from more extensive expulsions. So some of the smaller countries, and these EU countries, might have thought, well, we don't want all of our diplomats or most of our diplomats expelled from Russia, but we don't have many diplomats there. So we don't want to expel that many of theirs because we don't want many of ours expelled. I don't know, just a thought as to why their numbers are so low. There was also a really fascinating thing. There was one other interesting tidbit in this article I wanted to show you here. Yeah, so remember President Trump expelled, I guess it was 12 intelligence officers and 48 diplomatic officers. Where does it say up here? It says, let me go up here. 60 Russian intelligence and diplomatic, and it says 12 Russian diplomats at the UN and 48 at the Russian embassy. I don't know if it says how many of these people who are diplomats are supposed to be also working as intelligence officers, like actually spying while they're being diplomats. But 60 total were expelled, and there's this interesting number down here. It says, the Russians keep about 100 intelligence officers in Washington, New York, and San Francisco, former U.S. officials said. The diplomatic corps numbers in the thousands. That's very interesting to me. First of all, that I didn't realize there were thousands of diplomatic representatives here in I didn't realize there were thousands of diplomatic representatives of Russia here in the United States. But also, this says Russians keep about 100 intelligence officers, 100 spies in Washington, New York, and San Francisco. So, given that we kicked out 60 officials and some of them are intelligence officers, that seems like a not insignificant percentage of them. Although there was another interesting point in this article where somebody they asked somebody about it, and some experts said, well, they can just replace the people they kicked out. Where was that here? Let's see if I can find that. There are all these tidbits in this article I thought were quite interesting. Yeah, somebody named Sulik. Who's the Sulik person they quoted? Michael Sulik, former head of the CIA's National Clandestine Service and former Moscow station chief, said, Putin will likely see this as a temporary setback, knowing that over time he can replace intelligence officers. Now, that's interesting because remember, the Trump administration kicked out 60 intelligence officers today, or 60 diplomatic and intelligence officers today. I guess that's what they were calling it. But they kicked out those 60 people, but they didn't lower the number of people Russia can have in the country by 60. So in theory, I believe these 60 people could leave and 60 others could show up. I believe that's the case. Now, Sulik, this former CIA official, said he would have preferred the Trump administration taking more aggressive actions, such as revealing financial information that would embarrass Putin on the world stage, or other actions that would really cut into him economically. Also, though, where was the thing about, what was I going to say about the replacing people? Oh, this was interesting. There was something in here about how kicking out Russian officials can actually make it harder for U.S. intelligence. The argument was, let me see if I can find it in here. That was quite interesting. Oh, here's the numbers about the 55-60. Well, let me first, the point I had seen somebody make was saying, some experts said, well, when new Russians come to the U.S., a way the U.S. intelligence can figure out if they're spies is seeing who they talk to. And if they have meetings and talk to the existing Russian intelligence officers, that helps America figure out that these new people are spies. But if you kick out existing intelligence officers, you make it harder to figure out if the new people coming in are intelligence officers, because an important way of figuring that out is seeing if they talk to the existing intelligence officers. So I thought that was an interesting point. And we, as I was saying before, I was wondering why 60? Why so many? Why 60 kicked out when England kicked out 23 and all the other countries today kicked out much fewer than that? Ukraine 13 and the rest of them I think were 4 and below. But as I mentioned, so in the U.S. the expulsion of 60 diplomats period, not just Russians, 60 diplomats period, is believed to be the most sweeping since the Reagan administration ordered 55 diplomats out of the country in 1986. So if I'm reading this right, this might be the most diplomats from a country that's ever been kicked out of the U.S. at once. And maybe that was the reason for 60. Maybe it was a way for the Trump administration to say, this is unprecedented action that we're doing today. That's why they chose 60. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Hey, thank you to Gail for your donation. Thank you, Gail. And thank you to, let's see, Mr. Nicktown made a donation. Mr. Nicktown said, get him, Steve. Well, if YouTube keeps putting black screens on our broadcast, we're going to keep complaining. But thank you for the donations. That's very nice of you guys. That's what keeps us on the air. Oh, Andrew Sheck made a comment. Andrew Sheck, I think, made another donation and said, Periscope stream crashed? What? It should be working, Andrew. I'm seeing it. I'm watching the Periscope stream live. Yeah, it's working. Look, this is Periscope. See, it's working. It's working, Andrew. I have it on the side here. Okay. So anyways, also one other thing I wanted to bring up about this whole thing is that in addition to expelling the diplomats, President Trump is closing the Russian consulate in Seattle. And one question about that was like, I was like, does that have any? I mean, the consulate's there to help out Russians. I mean, well, the administration believes it's there to conduct intelligence in part. But aside from that, presumably it helps out Russians who are in this country. Could that in any way hurt Americans if Russia says we're going to close a consulate in Russia near where some Americans are staying? Now, I just remembered also, I got to give it, this Washington Post article had a bunch of really interesting stuff. A lot of it was kind of buried, but I thought a lot of it was quite interesting. Another interesting thing they mentioned was they talked about how, and I've seen this before, Russia's foreign embassies, is it foreign embassies? They like to kind of troll other countries on their Twitter accounts. So they had a tweet that was posted by, I believe, Russia's embassy in the U.S. See if I can find it here. If not, I'll just look it up on Twitter. Yeah, the Russian embassy in Washington. So this is Russia and USA, and they say, U.S. administration ordered the closure of the Russian consulate in Seattle. What U.S. consulate general would you close in Russia if it was up to you to decide? So they're kind of trolling the U.S. here. And you can see there have been 28,000 votes. And it's Vladivostok, St. Petersburg, or I don't know what Yakat is. Yakat is a different place. I think that's short for something. But, somebody might argue, well, if they close the consulate in St. Petersburg, that hurts the Americans in St. Petersburg because they no longer have the consulate there to provide services to them. So anyways, just throwing this stuff out. All right, I want to hear from you about this. What do you think about the Trump administration today expelling the 60 Russian officials and closing the consulate, the Russian consulate in Seattle? What do you think about that? Do you think that's a nice, balanced response? Is it too much? Is it too little to the attack, the nerve agent attack by Russia, according to the UK, on UK soil with a nerve agent that seriously injured one of its former spies and his daughter? Also, by the way, a number of British people were exposed to this nerve agent. Well, a police officer, did the police officer die or was the police officer hurt? I'm trying to remember this. It's been a while ago. I have to look this up. Hold on. Russian nerve attack, UK. Police officer. I can't even remember. Oh, he left the hospital. Okay. Police officer poisoned in Sergei Skripal attack leaves hospital. So he ended up being okay. But he was hurt. But I also saw a tweet this morning about how I think 130 people were exposed to this nerve agent in England when this happened. Let me show you that tweet. Yeah, Sky News tweeted this. Prime Minister Theresa May says more than 130 people in Salisbury could have been exposed to the nerve agent used to poison former spy Sergei Skripal. So, you can imagine if that happened in America and all these Americans were exposed to nerve agent, how upset the American government would be. And American citizens, too. Let's see here. Did I miss a donation? I got Gail's. JC made a donation. JC said, F YouTube, take 30% of this and shove it up your A. Keep fighting RSBN. Thank you, JC. Thank you, JC, Guinevere, Real Frank, and Webster for moderating the chat. We appreciate it. All right, want to hear from you. What do you think about the expulsions today and the closing of the Russian consulate in Seattle? Too much? Too little? Just right? Give me a shout. Let me know. I am on Twitter, at Lookner on Twitter, at Lookner. Flyshacker made a donation. Flyshacker said, Flyshacker loves RSBN, but hates YouTube blackout. Special thanks for late night news coverage. RSBN, RSBN, RSBN. Thank you, Flyshacker. Webster, thank you for writing to YouTube to tell them to stop censoring RSBN. You can also tweet YouTube at YouTube and at Team YouTube. Oh, thank you. Hold on a second. So KC2YKN sent me a tweet from another tweet from the Russian embassy in Washington, and it says, the United States took a very bad step by cutting very little still remains in terms of Russian-American relations. Is this in Russian or is this in English? Let's see. This is from the Russian embassy. They posted this.
Requested to come to State Department, where it was announced that 48 diplomats will be expelled from the territory of the United States. Our Consulate General in Seattle will be closed since the 13th of March. And staff could join to other Russian organizations who are working in United States, and some of them can return back to Moscow. I mentioned in my statement in State Department that I consider these actions counterproductive. I said that the United States did a very bad step, undercutting a little what we still have in Russian-American relations. These decisions are going against to the telephone conversation between our two presidents. This conversation was constructive, and not only me, but all diplomatic staff considers that it could be converted into constructive actions. I think that it's up to United States to decide what kind of relations they want to have with the Russian Federation. But I'm sure that time will come, they will understand what kind of grave mistake they did, and I hope that maybe in the future our relations will be restored. It's very important to notify that the United States and the Russian Federation are permanent members of Security Council. We bear special responsibility for international peace and stability. And of course, it's very important for all of us to tackle the main problem that we face today. It's international terrorism.
So, Russian official Antonov, is he the ambassador? I have to look this up. He said it was a grave mistake, what the U.S. did today, expelling those Russian officials and closing the consulate. Let me see this. Hold on. Said, I'm trying to get you the full name and title of that person. Antonov, okay. Yeah, the current here, this is who it was. Anatoly Antonov, who is the current Russian ambassador to the U.S. That's who that was. Thank you for sending in that video, or sending me the link to the video. Hey, we're taking your comments on this expulsion of diplomats and closing of the Russian consulate. Write to me on Twitter, @Lookner. Linda Brandon said she loved the feedback we sent to YouTube. Thank you, Linda. We're glad you liked it. SoCal Boho Gal writes in, seems Theresa May is trying to start ill will, perhaps war with Russia. Novichok was never made. It's an idea that never made it off the drawing board. BS. So SoCal Boho Gal questions the claims of the American government and the Trump administration, by the way. The Trump administration also has said they believe Russia was responsible for this. You are questioning those claims that Russia developed this nerve agent and used it to poison their former spy and his daughter. I want to show you. Can I find that for you? I believe I want to find you the quote where the administration says they do think that this was done by Russia. I know I saw it. It says, Mr. Trump has said that despite its denials, Russia was likely behind it. It looks like it, he told reporters in the Oval Office on March 15th. But SoCal Bohogal disagrees. So thank you for writing in. Grant, I see your question. It's a little bit of a long question. Also, it's not really about, I'll have to look at it. Let me look at it after the broadcast because we sort of try to stay on topic here during the broadcasts just to keep things focused so we don't lose our focus. So Grant, I'll look at that afterwards. Guinevere writes in, the consulate was closed because of its close proximity to sub bases and Boeing, according to the president's statement. I'm not sure why news people seem to be leaving that part out. Now, the Washington Post article did mention that because I remember reading it a little while ago in the broadcast. Let me show you. I'll show you. Yeah, so here's the part I read. They said in part they're closing the consulate in Seattle because of its proximity to a U.S. submarine base as well as Boeing manufacturing facilities. Ryan, our viewer, writes in, intel agencies know that these diplomats are spies. All of the diplomats kicked out of my country, UK, were spies, but intel agencies watch the spies to gather info on how foreign spies operate. Thank you, Ryan. That echoes something I was talking about before that. I'd read in an article today saying that by watching the spies who are already in the country, America can figure out who the new spies are because they look at who comes over from Russia and sees who talks to the current spies. But you're saying, it's as a larger point, you're saying intel agencies watch the spies to gather info on how foreign spies operate. So I was saying before, why would is there a cost to kicking these people out? And if these people were here conducting intelligence operations that threaten national security, why wouldn't we have kicked them out before today? But as you're pointing out, Ryan, there can be benefits perhaps to having leaving the spies in the country and watch what they are doing. If you know who the spies are and you watch what they're doing, and maybe you're listening in on them, that can tell you what intelligence the Russians have on you, which is a good, useful thing to know. I think you'd like to probably know what intelligence the Russians are getting from their spies. So it's all very complex with this stuff. Who do you kick out? Who do you not? Even if you know and all that. Hang on 1 second here. SoCal Bohalgal writes in, look up Novichok, look up chemical composition. It's theoretical, not a real nerve agent. So again, SoCal Bohalgal, all I can say is the British government says that's what it is, and the American government seems to agree with them. I'm not an expert on chemicals and stuff, so I haven't studied this personally myself, but you don't seem convinced by what the governments are saying about this. Zadok writes in, is Russia provoking a war or what? What do you say? Well, I will say this. There's been a lot of speculation of the general consensus is that Russia did this because only a state would have this kind of weapon, and so people who are experts on chemical weapons and where they come from apparently have concluded that this had to have come from Russia. Now, some people might say, why did Putin do this? He's so dumb or something for doing this. Now, in our earlier coverage of this attack in England, we had talked about, I had speculated on the air that this could be sending a message to other Russians. Sergei Skripal, who was the one attacked with this nerve agent, he was a Russian intelligence officer, but he had then been convicted by Russia of betraying Russia and selling intelligence to the British government. So he was in jail for treason in Russia. And then what happened is Russia traded him to England along with, as part of a prisoner swap. I believe it was a spy swap, if I'm remembering this right. So he was someone who had in the past sold secrets to England from Russian secrets. I don't know if he was still doing it, but this could be seen as a message to other possible turncoats in Russia. Hey, if you betray us and you start selling secrets to other countries, we'll come and find you and kill you or try to kill you, even if you're in the UK or a safe country like that. But something else I was wondering about, which I haven't seen people speculate about, but isn't it possible? Look, obviously, let's say that Russia did do this, as the U.S. government and the British government claims they did. Putin obviously would know that he would get a lot of crap for doing this and that this would invite a lot of criticism of Russia and sanctions and that kind of thing. So why would he do it? Now, something I've wondered is, might there have been some sort of crisis recently within Russia intelligence? Had there been some defectors or some turncoats recently in Russian intelligence, or were there rumors going around that a bunch of people were turning and selling their secrets? So was there some sort of intelligence crisis in Russian intelligence where their agents were selling secrets to other countries, where Putin just said, we have to do something, this is getting too bad, and we have to send a message? So, it's one thing just to do it to send a message, but one thing I was wondering about is, did Russia think their hand was forced because they were having a serious crisis in their intelligence ranks, and this is what they felt they had to do, even though they knew they would get a lot of bad publicity for it? I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. I was just wondering about that. Okay, last call for comments on this story. Give me a shout on Twitter, @Lookner, if you have comments, @LOOKNER. Let me know what you think about the Trump administration today kicking 60 Russian officials out of the country in response to the UK nerve attack that Russia allegedly did. Well, according to the British and American government, Russia did this, where they attacked a former Russian spy and his daughter in the UK, in England. And also, if you want to know when we're coming on the air with these broadcasts, be sure to subscribe to us on social media. So on YouTube, we are at Right Side Broadcasting. Click the notifications bell when you subscribe. Facebook, we're at Right Side Broadcasting. Twitter, @RSB Network. And Periscope, we are RSBN TV. I should, while I have a second, look at the Facebook chat real quick. Another thing about kicking out 60 officials, why that high number? A reason it could have been high also was to be able to say, President Trump does like to say he's tougher on Russia than Obama was. So I believe Obama kicked out 35 Russians in response to the election meddling, if I have that right. Yeah, in December 2016, the Obama administration expelled 35 Russian suspected intelligence operatives. So maybe President Trump thought, well, at least we should do more than 35. In our Facebook chat, Diana Lynn Smiley Alheiser says, hey, glad to see Trump doing what is best for us. Brian Wodorek says, this is outrageous. Absolutely no evidence has been presented. Brian says that Russia did this. Now, I will say this. On the one hand, there's not been a public presenting of evidence, but, you can imagine not wanting to present the evidence to not giving away intelligence secrets. But it makes it kind of difficult to convince a public if the public wants evidence. So there's probably a balance of wanting to convince the public and wanting to keep certain things secret in the British government. Stephen Hook in the Facebook chat says, okay, wait, Trump kicking 60 Russians out of the country, but I thought Trump was in bed with Putin, LOL. Margie B in the Facebook chat says, must stand with our allies. Chuck Trivet says, go big or stay home. Barbara Hurling says, we tried to be buds with Putin. I'm afraid it's impossible. Allison Moreau McAdams says, get them out. Good job, Mr. President. Maureen O'Neill DeFelice says, Fox is reporting this, but they think Trump's affair with this stripper is more important. Franco Rossi says, the first thing I can't understand from him. I guess Trump. Dean Donato says, it's the same old story. We will never know the truth. William Hunter in our YouTube chat says, I think we are being dazzled with BS demonizing Russia to justify foreign policy. KC2YKN says, Sergei Skripal, the person attacked, the former Russian spy attacked in this nerve attack, was in a Russian prison for 8 years. Why did they not kill him then? Why now? The nerve agent causes instant death. How is he still alive? How did the British know what antidote to give him if only Russians made the nerve agent? Well, let me just address the first question. We talked about this in our earlier broadcast. Why did they not kill him in Russian prison if they wanted him dead? Well, I don't know why, but we can think of a couple of reasons. First of all, they might have thought, well, they used him in exchange to get back people they wanted who England had in custody. So I believe it was a spy exchange. Is that what it was? And I don't know if these people they got in exchange for Skripal were, say, British intelligence officers who'd been working for Russia, but they used him to get people they wanted in a spy exchange. So they might have thought, well, why kill him when we can exchange him and get somebody in return and then kill him if we want when he's in England? I don't know. Another thing is, what we also don't know, was he doing, the reason he was in jail in Russia was for selling Russian secrets to the British. Was he continuing to work against Russia while in England? Had he done new stuff? And did Russia decide then, well, we have to put a stop to this? Or, as I said, might have there been a crisis recently in Russian intelligence where they felt they had to send a message to prospective turncoats. So we can certainly imagine reasons why Russia would kill him now and not before when he was in custody in Russia. I don't know what the truth is. I'm just throwing out some possible reasons. JC says, Steve, handle it. We are winning and we are not going to stop. Let the snowflakes melt. Pete Hudsbury sent me a tweet that said, not 37, but 355 people died in that fire. So I guess the toll in the Russian mall fire is 64 now, I think. You're saying somebody you follow on Twitter or aware of on Twitter thinks it's more than that. All I can go on is on the official reports from the different news agencies which say 64, but I'm not there, so I can't confirm that or anything. All right, I think we're going to wrap this up right now. Yeah, we're going to wrap up this stream right now. So we appreciate you joining us for this stream. If you like this coverage, if you like having an alternative to the mainstream media, we hope you consider donating, because your donations are what keep us on the air here at Right Side Broadcasting. So we really appreciate those of you who donated today. Thank you so much. If you want to donate, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Big shout out to our moderators, Guinevere, Webster, JC, Real Frank, and Common Sense and Gleno on the website. And for everybody for writing in, thank you for writing in and sharing your comments on this story. And if there's big breaking news later today, you know we will come on the air and cover it. And you can also follow me for breaking news. I'm on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. I cover breaking news nonstop on my Twitter. So follow me there for breaking news. Autozia in our YouTube chat says, total BS, Putin is not stupid. This is full-on Western propaganda. Jane Pappas says, thanks. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Miss Rob Mob. Thank you, Elysia Sight. Thank you, History B, for saying thank you for the stream. Thank you, Don Campbell. Thank you, Rosemary Micallef in the Facebook chat. Thank you, Original Revolution on Periscope, in the Periscope chat. Thank you. People watching on all the different platforms. That's good. Thank you, William Hunter. Thank you, Guinevere. And, okay, we're going to wrap this up now. So, again, thank you, Propus. If there's breaking news later today or tonight, we'll come on the air with it. So subscribe to us on all our social media. Follow us wherever. But for now, I am Steve Lookner. For all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting, we hope you have a great day and a great night. And we'll see you soon with more news. Have a good one.